Well, if you've watched any of the episodes on this channel, you know that I take an interest in really all different aspects of history. But one part of history that really interests me, close to the top or more than others, is presidential history. Love learning about the different presidents, different leadership styles, some of their character flaws, some of the things that they overcame during their presidencies. And today, I'm pretty excited because I am right here. This is the Hermitage, which is the home of our 7th president, Andrew Jackson. Well, as I mentioned, this is the Hermitage, located just outside of Nashville, Tennessee. And this was the home of the 7th president, Andrew Jackson, who lived here both before and after his term as president of the United States. This place comes highly, highly recommended. And I'm pretty pumped to get in here and see the home of one of the more dynamic personalities who ever held the office of President of the United States. Now, before we go into the Hermitage, I did want to show this structure because it's interesting, at least to me. This is known as Alfred's Cabin. Now, if you look, there's the Hermitage right there. So this is pretty much right in the backyard. Now, Alfred was a slave of Andrew Jackson. We're not going to defend slavery in any way, shape, or form here. It was a moral evil and should have never happened. But Jackson did appear to have kind of a special relationship with his slaves. As a matter of fact, on his deathbed, he said that he was going home to see his white family and his black family. So his slaves, again, not defending slavery, but they appeared to be well treated. And Alfred, as a matter of fact, even after emancipation, stayed here at the Hermitage and lived here well after Jackson's death. All right, now we're getting ready to go in here to the front parlor of the Hermitage. One thing to keep in mind as we're going through this house is, of course, it wasn't built for the 2000s with modern electricity and things like that. So a lot of it just relies on natural light. So we're going to do what we can as far as catching what we can with the lighting that we have. But super pumped to be in here. One thing about the Hermitage that makes it stand apart from any other place is that most of the things that you see in this home are going to be original. Very few reproductions. So pretty pumped to get in here as a history guy. All right, well, this is the entrance hall to the Hermitage. Very, very interesting. Now, it's gone through some changes in the early days. I think that he mentioned that there was a fire here at one point, and this wallpaper is all original to the house. And this is from it's depicting a Greek story of the son of Odysseus trying to find his father and having to go kind of on this journey. And he's got a mentor that kind of guides him along and teaches him how to avoid, temptations and sirens and different things like that. And then at the very end, they burn his ship, and you can see the son being thrown off of a cliff. I think the name was Telemachus was his name. And then once he hits the water, he kind of awakens from the dream. But anyway, that's what guests would have seen coming into the Hermitage. So we're going to take a look at some of the other rooms in this house. Very, very cool. Okay, so what we are looking at here is Jackson's dining room. And what is cool about this is, with the exception of the floor coverings and the chairs, everything in this room is original. So we'll kind of get up here. So all of the silver, all of the china, everything that you see here belonged to Andrew Jackson. All right, now this is exceptionally cool. This mantle, as the story goes, is made out of hickory to kind of go along with Jackson's nickname of Old Hickory. And the story goes that one of these soldiers that served with him in the War of 1812 started carving this and would only work on it during the anniversary of the Battle of New Orleans. And anyway, presented it to Jackson in 1840. Very, very interesting. So random stuff kind of interests me. This is called a ramekin, and apparently this was used to serve melted chocolate. Never heard of one of those before. Pretty cool though. Okay, so coming out of the dining room now and into the front parlor. So this is an area that is definitely a little bit more in my wheelhouse. This is where Jackson would sit, and this was kind of like his military room where he kept military artifacts and would talk to people about his days in the War of 1812. And there are some artifacts in here that are just extremely interesting. One of the gifts that was common during the Jackson era was to give people a cane. And there are several canes in here, including this one. This is actually a cane that unfolds, and you could put a coat over it and make like a little camp chair. But we are not going to try it out. Okay, now this is something else that's pretty interesting. This is a candle that was taken from the tent of Lord Cornwallis. It's pretty interesting. And then this item right here is a chunk of Plymouth Rock. And then if you look back here, you can see this bayonet. This is a British bayonet that was stuck in a cypress root and recovered from the battlefield of the Battle of New Orleans. Okay, now this is another item to look for whenever you come to the Hermitage. This is a cane that was made from a vine that grew over the grave of George Washington and then was presented to Andrew Jackson. And then up here, also interesting, these are scripture medals. So on the front, they would depict different stories from the Bible, and then I'm not going to touch it, but if you were to flip it over and look on the back, it would have the corresponding scripture. Very interesting. Okay, I just learned something new. So this cup is made from something called a chevaux de fruits, I think is how you say it. Everybody knows how well I do with French pronunciations. But anyway, you can kind of think of it like a pike that goes underwater and is used to pierce boats and damage them. Well, somebody made one of those, or made this cup from one of these underwater pikes from the War of 1812 and then presented it to Jackson. So what we are looking at here is the front parlor of the Hermitage. So this is kind of like the family parlor. You can see some portraits of the family here. Now, this bust of Andrew Jackson, Tony told me, is probably the best likeness of him. So this is most likely what Jackson would have looked like. A few other interesting things. This piano right here was purchased by Jackson as a gift to his granddaughter, and he paid more for this than he did anything else in the house. This cost $400 at the time. I don't know what that would be today with inflation, but I can imagine that was a very, very expensive piece. And then a few other things. These urns here are gifts to Jackson from the Tsar of Russia. So we have some evidence of Russian collusion with Andrew Jackson. Now, here's something that's kind of interesting. In the entire history of the United States, there have only been 2 years where we did not have a national debt. And those 2 years are whenever Andrew Jackson was the president. He was really against debt. And the way that it got paid off was, well, France owed the U.S. a lot of money, and Jackson essentially threatened war if they didn't pay up. So anyway, a little bit of tension was built up there, and afterwards the King of France commissioned a wood sculpture, and Jackson ended up giving it to his granddaughter, and that's right here in her bedroom. So here's the sculpture that I was just talking about that King Louis Philippe of France commissioned to give to Jackson as a gift of goodwill following the tension there, and you can see them embracing under like a tree of peace. And then Jackson gave it to his granddaughter as a gift. So pretty nice gift. The gift of the doll is questionable. I don't think I'd want that thing staring at me at night. Okay, so this is Jackson's library. And again, just like with all of the other rooms here in the Hermitage, the furniture, almost everything here is original, including these bound volumes of newspapers, which if we were able to open them up, you could see some of Jackson's writing in the margins where he made some notes. Pretty interesting. Now, in one of the early videos that we did, we talked about Dred Scott and the Dred Scott decision. Well, the Chief Justice was a guy by the name of Roger Taney, which we talked about. Well, this chair was a gift from Roger Taney to Jackson. It's called a, oh, wait a minute, the name has escaped me. Help. A Campeche chair. So this is a Campeche chair that was a gift to Jackson because Jackson had appointed Taney to the Supreme Court. Okay, and again, all of these books are books that belong to Jackson. Now, if you go to D.C., to the National Portrait Gallery, well, here is what you would see for Jackson's portrait, except for it's much larger. This is a smaller version that was made for Jackson. What we are looking at here is Andrew Jackson's bedroom. And this is the bed where Andrew Jackson died. Now, he was preceded in death by his wife Rachel, who died really just after his election. And if you look right here, you can see a portrait of his wife Rachel. This was moved to his bedroom so that it would be the very first thing that he would see whenever he woke up in the morning, and the very last thing that he would see before he fell asleep at night. And also, if you come here, if you look by the fireplace, well, there's Andrew Jackson's slippers. All right, now what we're looking at right now is on the second floor of the Hermitage, coming out on the portico. And man, look at the view that Jackson would have had coming out here on his front porch. Something else. By the way, just as a little side note for people that are like into trees and things like that, these two holly trees are probably some of the biggest holly trees in the United States, and were planted here whenever Jackson lived here. Kind of interesting. All right, well, we just walked out of the Jackson home, and we're heading out to his tomb in the garden. Now, Jackson is really an interesting figure. In my opinion, regardless of whether you love him or hate him, what opinions you have about him, he's one of the more interesting presidents that we've ever had. Now, his stock has kind of gone up and down in recent years, largely due to his signing of the Indian Removal Act. Now, there's an interesting, I guess, alternate perspective on that. I'm not going to defend the relocation of the Native Americans at all, so please don't hear that. But one of his biographers dug back into his writings and basically argues that Jackson had the motivation in signing the Indian Removal Act of actually trying to protect the Native Americans. I know it sounds weird, but that he was actually trying to clear them out because he knew that the white settlers would encroach upon their territory and possibly wipe them out. Now, again, that doesn't excuse it, but it adds a little bit more depth to Jackson and maybe explains a little bit more of his reasoning. Interesting character, though. And here is the tomb of Andrew Jackson and his wife Rachel. Now, on Jackson's grave, it might be a little bit hard to see, but it doesn't say President Andrew Jackson, it says General Andrew Jackson. So that's what he wanted to most be known for, was his role in the military. And his role as president was just something that he did as what he saw a service to the people. Wow. Now, earlier we saw the quarters of Jackson's slave, whom they called Uncle Alfred. Well, here is his grave. Was 98 years old, and etched in his tombstone says, "Faithful servant of Andrew Jackson." Not going to defend slavery in any way, but it is really cool that he is laid to rest here right next to a president of the United States. All right, well, that was the Hermitage right here in Nashville, Tennessee. Very, very cool place. Learned a lot about a really interesting, controversial, and complex figure. A lot of things that I didn't know before. It kind of gives me a new view on Jackson and makes me want to learn more about him. But yeah, that was the Hermitage. Come to this place. Very, very cool experience. Here is the sculpture that I was just talking about that King Louis Philippe of France commissioned to give to Jackson as a president. As a president, wow.